missed it. Dennis fights for the rebound, tapped it out, and it'll belong to Minnesota.
He kicked the cameraman. He was really upset.
Believe it or not, what you just watched, Dennis Rodman kicking that cameraman in the nuts in 1997 at a Timberwolves game, has totally changed whether the IRS is allowed to tax your personal injury settlement. My name is Sina Rezvanpour. I'm a personal injury and lemon law attorney here in Southern California. And I may regret saying this, but let's watch a little bit more of this video.
All kinds of equipment right there, and the cameraman is hurt. Now the man acts like he's dying.
If you've ever been kicked in that area, you know that the pain can kind of grow over the next couple of minutes. Or maybe he's just putting on a show. We really can't tell. But what we do know is that this cameraman eventually brought a personal injury claim, likely for assault and battery, against Dennis Rodman. Clearly, we witnessed an injury that was caused by Dennis Rodman. He kicked the cameraman. I think he probably kicked the wrong cameraman. It looks like he tripped on someone else's stuff. But regardless, he kicks this cameraman. The cameraman then brings a claim against Dennis Rodman. I read in one place that the claim settled before a lawsuit was filed, and I read somewhere else that a lawsuit was filed, but the case settled immediately after. So regardless, he brings some legal claim against Dennis Rodman. Now, most personal injury claims, there's insurance involved, but for something like this, an intentional tort, an intentional wrongful act, insurance is never going to cover that stuff. That's just as a public policy. We don't want to allow insurance to cover the intentional assault or battery upon innocent people. So this means Dennis Rodman personally was coughing up money to compensate the cameraman to resolve this claim. We know that the case settled for $200,000 back in 1997. So I looked it up. We don't know how accurate this is, but that's probably closer to $320,000 or $330,000 in today's money, which is a pretty good amount. Now, I don't know how injured the cameraman actually was, but just from the sounds of it, that's a pretty sizable settlement. And like all settlements, Dennis Rodman's attorneys expected for the cameraman to sign a settlement agreement. And as part of that settlement agreement, there is a confidentiality provision. Let's just assume that the confidentiality provision says that you are not allowed to talk about these events, you're not allowed to disparage or badmouth Dennis Rodman, and you're not going to say how much your settlement was for, and if someone asks you, you're just going to say that the matter was settled. So the case is over, and eventually the time comes where the cameraman needs to report the compensation that he received. As a general principle, the IRS says in the tax code that you do not have to pay taxes on compensation you receive in response to a personal injury that you suffered. But in this case, the IRS says you do need to pay taxes on that $200,000. The cameraman and his attorney say, what are you talking about? The tax code is very clear on the subject and we don't have to pay taxes on the $200,000. The cameraman then brings a case challenging the IRS's decision. And the tax court says, because the settlement agreement did not differentiate how much of that $200,000 was going towards personal injuries and how much of that $200,000 was going towards confidentiality, we're going to make that determination for you. So the tax court arbitrarily says that $80,000 of that $200,000 settlement was probably meant for confidentiality, so we're going to tax you on that $80,000. Of course, Rodman probably did pay a premium because he was a celebrity, but it does just seem off that the tax court was allowed to arbitrarily choose how to split up the settlement as far as injuries versus confidentiality. As you can imagine, this ruling has shaken things up a bit, and it totally changes how we handle personal injury settlements. There's a few tips that we recommend when you're entering into any settlement agreement. Number one is do not agree to confidentiality if you don't have to. Number two is if you end up agreeing to confidentiality, make sure to specify in the settlement agreement how much of the settlement money is going towards confidentiality versus towards compensation for injuries. And the third strategy would be to ask for mutual confidentiality. If you were injured and you brought a claim, you should probably discuss the terms of your settlement agreement with your attorney before you actually sign it. If there's something in there like one-way confidentiality or there's no apportionment on the money that's going towards confidentiality, you want to ask your attorney to revise that agreement. Pretty sure at some point since 1997, the NBA has now pushed back the area where the photographers and the camera people sit, keeping them more safe, keeping the players more safe, and avoiding any craziness like what we just watched. Hopefully you found this interesting. My name is Sina Rezvanpour, and this is not legal advice.